Good morning and welcome to the webinar. This webinar is looking at a product design series which is going to run over the next few weeks. In this first webinar, we're going to be looking at solid and surface modeling. Over the next few weeks, we'll be looking at various different areas within the same design. So I've got the model up that we're going to be having a look at. So this is the design we're going to be looking at over the next few weeks, this water gun. And we're going to be looking at various areas, like I say, starting off today with the solid and surface modeling for this design. Looking at future webinars at internals and looking at maybe simulations and also producing documentation for this kind of thing as well as simple things like producing the assembly modeling and actually putting in the assembly mates. So starting off today, like I said, we're going to start off with a bit of modeling, and we're going to start off by modeling some of the more complex areas of the design that might not be quite so obvious. I'm having a look first of all at the handle on the rear of the design, because you'll see that it is tapered in a number of angles, okay, if we're looking at it from different directions. And it's also got quite a complex profile as it curves around these edges here. We're going to have a look at how to create the simple form for this design in quite an easy manner. So I'm going to switch over to an existing model, which I'm going to start off from. Okay, so in this design we've got two sketches. The sketches are showing the design from a number of different angles. So we can see that this would be the front view of the design, and also we've got the top view there around from the other direction. In this particular design, I'm going to start off by extruding out some of these profiles. So using my features toolbar, I'll go ahead and actually extrude this first profile out. And because I've already defined how far I want the thing to go across, I can actually define it so it's going up to vertex and just select one of the points from the other sketch. The second sketch I'm just going to define using the same technique, using the extruded boss, but this time I'm going to put it so that it is through all. You'll notice it's not going downwards though, so we need to also turn on direction 2 and put through all on in there as well. The important thing about this is to make sure that we've unticked the merge results option, because that will then define these two objects to become separate bodies. Okay. You'll see then we get a solid bodies folder with two separate items inside of it. The advantage of doing that is it allows us to do some quite different operations when we've got two different bodies as opposed to just working with one. The operation I'm going to do on them today is to go to Insert, Features, and then Combine. To actually combine those two items together, you'll see we can do Add to join them together, Subtract to cut one from the other, or we can get the common interference between the two parts. If I select the common interference, we can then choose these two pieces and then just end up with the area where they overlap, which is this profile just here. And you'll see that is the sort of complex shape we're looking for. Now I've just modeled half of the design to start off with. There's no point in modeling the full design if you can model it in half. It just makes it that bit simpler. The next thing I want to do though is to get the filleted edges around here. Now the tricky bit about this is if we were to just put in a normal fillet, for example, it's quite hard to try and match it up so it's exactly the right size because we've got an angled face on the side here. You can try and sort of change the measurements to get it about right. You know, you can put it to 11.1. That's not bad. You know, that's quite close. But again, to get it exactly tangent in what would be the middle of the design there would be quite tricky. The way I'm going to do it today is to use the face fillet option. If I select face fillet, I can choose to fillet between two faces in the model. I'll go between these two. And the nice thing about this is we can use the fillet options, which are lower down, to define the size of the fillet. Using this hold line, I can then choose to go up to a particular edge in the design. Okay, so I'll just choose this edge here, and that will become my hold line. It will then pull the fillet size to that particular edge. Unfortunately, that means I have to put in the fillets a number of times because obviously I can only have one hold line per fillet. So I'll go in and insert the same thing again, using, again, that hold line. And again, for the bottom edge, I'll do the same. If we select the first edge and we don't move our mouse, you'll see the icon appear next to my mouse. There's a little turn symbol on the right click of the mouse key. If we right click at that position, it takes us down to the second box straight away, so we don't have to move our mouse too much. Okay, so that's defined the kind of simple shape of the model. I then want to mirror this design over to the other side. The way to do that would be to use the mirror tool. Using mirror face, we can then select this item as the face or plane right down the middle because it's flat. I don't want to mirror it using features though, so I'll clear that selection. I want to mirror it using bodies. The advantage of doing that is it's far more robust. If we're mirroring using bodies, it means we can go into the design at any point. We can take out features like this fillet, for example, and it doesn't fail. It just automatically updates. And it also means that we can add features to this body here, and they will automatically propagate across to the other side as long as they're above the mirror in the design tree. So it makes it far simpler to work with. So that's the overall kind of simple shape of that handle. Okay, we're now going to move on to another example. Okay, we'll just get rid of that one. So the second example I'm going to have a look at around the top here is the joint between this hole in the head, okay, and the fact that it's tangent on the other side. So you'll see that it's sort of cutting into the model, but it has a nice tangent joint at this position. It's not a nice smooth joint between the two. We've also got it so that it is slightly drafted on this face just here as well. Okay, so again, I'm going to open up another example which will show that model in an earlier form. This model is the position where it's just before where the hole would be inserted. So what we've got here is the sketch that would be the shape of that hole, that cutout in the model. Okay, but the tricky bit is actually getting it to cut to the right depth. The way to do that is to actually insert a surface as a reference. And I'm going to insert that surface on either the right plane or the front plane, it doesn't matter. I'm going to draw a curve, okay, a 3-point arc, which is defined either on the right or the left. Again, it doesn't matter which side you draw it on. That curve is just going to match up, and that's going to give me the tangency in this particular design. So I'm going to control select the edge down the side there and my arc to put in the tangent relationship between them. So then I have a nice smooth joint at one end. I can then go ahead and put in some just some measurements to hold it in position. So I'll define it so that it's 13 from the bottom there, and I'll design the size of the radius there is 45. And also from the other edge, I'm going to make sure that between these 2 points that they are horizontal. And that just defines, so that it's fully defined, the size of that particular arc. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is just make sure I've got a center line down the middle. I'll put a center line right down the middle of the model. Using that center line, I can then spin that curve right the way around the model using a revolve. But because it is just one sketch item, it's just one sketch line, rather than doing it as a solid, I'm going to do it as a surface. I'm going to do a revolve surface, and it automatically creates as soon as you select it, because we created that center line. So that gives me a reference to actually cut up to. So then I'll select my sketch 4 that I created earlier on. I can then cut that into the model using extruded cut. But rather than just doing a blind cut, which will be quite tricky to actually get to the right depth, I'm going to do what's known as up to surface as an end condition. Using up to surface, we can actually go up to a particular surface that we've already created. So I'm just going to right click on this design because you'll see it's a little bit tricky to actually select where we want the actual item to go up to. Okay. So if we right click in this area, we can choose select other, and that just selects things underneath the mouse. It hides the surface that we're hovering over, and it allows us to go through and right click to hide other surfaces. But once I've found the one I'm looking for, which is this one here, I can left click to select it. And you see that gives me the shape of the cut in the model. Okay, so that's that complex cutout. I can then hide away the surface which is underneath, so I can just expand the surface bodies folder. Because I've used it as a reference, I just hide it away when I've finished using it. And I can then insert the drafted edges onto the inside of the design there. So I'll select the draft tool. I can do a neutral plane draft, which actually measures the angle of the draft from the plane that we select. Or I can do a parting line draft, which will actually measure it from an edge we click on. And I'm going to do a parting line for this one. The direction of pull, well, that just wants to be any plane or any face which is normal to the direction we want to apply the draft in. So I'm going to go for this plane 1 that's been created earlier on. Okay, that was just the plane that we created the sketch on for this cutout. The parting lines, though, are these edges on the model just here. The draft angle I've set to 25 degrees. And if we just want to make sure that we got the draft going the right direction, you know, we've got this direction of pull going the right way, we can then use the preview to then see if that's correct or not. And if you just turn on highlight, turn off highlight new or modified faces, it's a lot easier to see what's going on. So that preview just sometimes becomes quite useful. But if it isn't correct, you can sometimes just flip the direction of pull and that will get it right. So it's giving me the shape of the cutout that I want to create, and then I can just put some fillets just to round it off on either side. So I'll just do a constant radius fillet. Okay, quite a small one though. I'm going to do it at 0.5. Okay. I'm then going to do a circular pattern. I'm going to do that around the design. Now, because this model is cylindrical, it automatically has a temporary axis running through the middle when we created it. So we can select the temporary axes, and they can then choose those in the parameters box at the top, and that will become the center of this circular pattern. The features to pattern we can select from the design tree here. That's my fillets, the draft, and also the extrude. And in this particular example, I'm going to turn on the geometry pattern option, which copies the actual geometry of these features rather than any of the end conditions behind them. It just works slightly better in this example. Okay, and there's the finished shape of the design. And if we switch ourselves over so that we're set to a shaded display, okay, we can see there's that nice joint between the edges. Okay, so I'm just going to have a look at the next example now. In this design, the next thing I want to have a look at is the actual grill on the end here. Now, when we're creating patterns in SolidWorks, if we're creating a number of entities inside of a pattern, it can sometimes become quite slow to rebuild. We're going to have a look at one way we can actually create this grill in here without, like say, it being too slow to actually rebuild. So we're going to have a look at this plate. So just started off with a revolve feature. Okay, this revolve is just forming the actual shape of the dish and that plate that we're actually cutting through. The first thing I want to do is just do a sketch on the top plane, and this is just going to define the actual area that I want this pattern to sit within. Okay, so I'm just going to do a circle, which is going to say that the pattern will be no bigger than the size of this. Okay, I'll define that so that it is 46 in radius. Okay, and then once we've put that in, I can go ahead and actually extrude that shape. I'm going to extrude it by quite a small measurement, just 1 mil. and then I'm going to go ahead and actually offset it as well. So using the from selection, we can actually offset it from the model by 2 millimeters. Okay, and you see it's currently offset above the design. We flip the offset and then also flip the direction of extrusion. We can then get it going the correct way. So I've created that first one. The second sketch I'm going to create is actually going to sit on this face just here. This is actually going to be the circle, which is going to be the sort of shape of the hole through the model. Okay, so it's just going to be a 0.5 mil hole through the design. But rather than doing this as an extruded cut in here, I'm actually going to do it as an extruded boss. I'm going to extrude it out by 5 millimeters, so that it goes all the way through the model. The important thing here is what we're looking at earlier on. The merge results tick box is currently on, which means it will merge up with anything it's touching. If I use the feature scope, though, I can choose what to join up with. So if I untick auto select, I can then manually pick the piece on the bottom there, the extrude that we created, rather than the revolved plate. So if I hit the tick, that gives us two bodies. Okay, first of all the plate, and then we've got the extrude we created there. I'm then going to go ahead and create another sketch on this face here. This is just to help me define the actual fill pattern. So I'm going to do just a straight line sketch, like so. Okay. Once I've defined these two items, I can then go ahead and put in my fill pattern, which is available from the drop down there. My fill boundary is going to be the circle that I created earlier on, this one here. There's various different types of fill which we can choose from, you'll see. I'm going to choose the circular fill type, but again you could switch to any of those ones. And we can define it using the features of pattern as this one, and also the direction as this straight line that we created just a second ago. And that gives me the pattern on the model, but I just want to adjust the dimensions so that it is 3 from each selection box. Okay, and that fills the face so it looks like so. Okay, and if I then untick or the feature scope auto select box again, I can just choose to manually merge up with this body at the bottom. Okay, and I'll hit the tick. So again, that keeps the two items as separate bodies. We've still got that revolve, and we've still got the items which will become the holes. Now, by doing all the holes as one body, it just makes it that bit easier to deal with. It just makes it that bit quicker when we come to actually rebuild the model. We can then go ahead and use the tool we used earlier on from insert features and then combine. Rather than combining, we're going to subtract this time though. I'm going to subtract from the plate the holes that we created. Hit the tick. It should produce that shape of the plate quite quickly. Now, you'll see if we go to Tools and then Feature Statistics down the menu there, you can see that the rebuild time on this one is just over 3.5 seconds. Okay, and it will come down if you just adjust the settings for these as well. So, by doing a pattern like this, you can actually make sure that a pattern with quite a few items in it will actually rebuild in quite a speedy time. Okay, the last thing we're going to have a look at in this particular webinar is the area at the bottom here. We're going to have a look at creating the loft for this area, and also this sort of edge around here, which is obviously nice and smooth at the top there, but has a bit of a lip around the bottom as well. So we're going to have a look at how to create something like this within SolidWorks. Okay, so I'm going to open up an existing model, which is the main body. Okay, this is just 2 sketch pictures that have already been created. Okay, the sketch pictures are just images from my computer. If we want to insert another one, we can do it just from creating a sketch first of all, and then go to Tools, Sketch Tools, and then Sketch Picture. I'm going to select and insert this PNG file. Okay. You'll notice that in my sketch I've already got a straight line which defines the length that I've measured this particular part to be. So it's useful to just measure the item with a ruler before you insert it and just draw a straight line in your sketch just to help you get it the right size. And then you can just size the item down by dragging it in the corner and just by moving it into position to get the item nice and central. Okay, so I can just shift the item into position. I measured from this edge here up to the edge on the other end. So I just want to make sure I've got it going right across the design. Okay, that should be the correct length there, something like that. And if I just have a look at that, just make sure it's nice and equal in the middle. Okay, and measured up nicely at either end. When we've used a PNG file, the advantage of it is it doesn't have a background. We can actually remove the background from the image. Okay, so that's just something unique about PNG files. You can do that with some photo editing software. Then the advantage of within SolidWorks then is you can use the transparency settings from file to actually remove that area that you've already got rid of. And it just means that then you don't end up with the white area or black area around the edge of the image like you would do normally. It just gives you the actual edge of the image and that's it. Okay. Once I've done that, I can then just drag that into the Sketch Pictures folder. Okay, and then I can deal with all of those in one go. And then I can start actually building up the shape to create this overall model. So first of all, I'm going to do a sketch on the top plane. Okay, this sketch is just going to be a semicircle. So I'm going to use the center point arc tool from the middle of the design. Okay, just draw that out from this position around to this side. Okay, and we're going to line up the 3 points that we've got there by control selecting them and putting in a horizontal relationship. And I'll just define the size of this radius at 19.5. Okay, and like I say, it may just be that the sketch picture is not quite placed, and the reason why that's a little bit off. Again, it is useful to just to measure. If you can measure the design as you're working on it, it is useful. Or if you have got sort of drawings to work from. Okay, but the sketch pictures just help you as a guide. So that's the first sketch. Actually, one thing I want to put in this sketch is just a center line right down the middle. So the center line is just going to help me build something later on. So that's just going to be a line cutting down the middle of the design there. Okay. The next sketch is just going to be drawn on the front plane. And I'm going to use the spline tool just to draw out splines down either edge of the model. Okay. And these are just going to roughly define the shape of the model. So starting at the top here, I'm not going to go any higher than this point just here. I'm going to go down the model, and it's useful when you're drawing out using splines to draw the points you're putting in at the peaks and troughs of the curve. So you draw at one end, put it at the lowest point of this curve, okay, about there, and then I'm going to go down to the end. That doesn't match the edge at the moment, but if we just play around with the spline a little bit, the first thing I want to do is just make sure that this end point, by control selecting this and the sketch we just drew, are matching up exactly in the same place. And we can use the Pierce relationship to do that. Okay. The next thing I want to do is just select this spline and actually use the drag handles at either end to influence the shape of it. Okay, so I can just pull it around like so. If you want to pull it around the other end as well, that should help the position to pull itself into place. And you can also right click on the spline to also use control polygons to help yourself define it. And they will just help you drag the points around, but also the position of where the points are placed as well. If you just drag it around for a second, you should be able to get quite an accurate match with what you're measuring up with. I'm not too worried about getting it sort of spot on, but that should be sort of close enough in the meantime. The next thing I'm going to do is define another spline down this right-hand edge. So that's just going to be a 2-point spline. Okay, I'm just going to take that from this bottom edge here up to the top. Okay, again I'm going to use the same relationship I did this last time of pierce. I'm going to use the drag handles again at either end just to define the overall shape. Okay, so that nicely sort of matches the edge of the model on both sides. We just tweak those drag handles a little bit. And that gives us the kind of shape of the model. Okay, so that's why it's useful to have sketch pictures. The next thing I want to do is actually put in a sketch plane. Now the sketch plane is actually going to be joined up in the middle of the model, so I need another construction line in here. I'm going to draw a center line from the tops of either of these edges. And I'm going to draw a point in the middle of that center line. I can then use reference geometry in a plane down the middle of the model using that construction line I put in earlier on in the first sketch and the point that I've just put in to put a sketch plane right down the middle. And that will just help me build out the next profile from this edge. So rather than drawing out all these sketches, I'm actually going to skip forward a second after I've actually created the sketches just to make things a little bit easier. Okay, so I'll skip forward to the point after I've actually created the sketches, and it's just a sketch down the side there and the sketch around the top. I'll just show you how I created those. So you can see, if we just bring back the sketch pictures, the sketch down the side was on that sketch plane we just created. And then around the top we created another sketch plane that was joined up with the endpoints of the 3 curves that we've got. And then we can draw either a spline or an ellipse as it is in this case for the top edge. And that gives us all the entities to actually create a loft which defines the shape of this edge, or maybe another item like a boundary surface. So we'll just get rid of those for a second. I'm then going to choose the lofted surface tool. I'm going to loft between this edge at the bottom to the top edge there, just making sure the green dots line up. And then we'll select my 3 guide curves just one by one, and you can use a selection manager to help you. Okay, you just right click, choose a selection manager, and then you can just choose the edge and hit the tick. Okay, it just helps you differentiate one sketch item from another. That gives me the shape of the loft. I also want to make sure, because it's only half the design at the moment, that I am making sure it's symmetrical. So I'm going to make sure it is normal to profile on both edges. Okay, so first of all the edge on one side wants to be normal. Then the edge on the other side also wants to be normal as well. Okay. And then I can hit the tick on that one. So that's created a nice smooth loft which defines a kind of basic shape for the model. Okay. If I bring back the sketch pictures now, I then want to just cut away an area within this model. So just so I can see the sketch pictures underneath, I'm going to expand my display pane on my surface bodies folder. I'm just going to click on this icon here, which makes the surface transparent. Okay, that's the surface body we're working with. I can then draw a sketch on the front plane. Okay, and the sketch is just going to be using splines. And I'm going to draw down these edges around the model. So by putting points around the design, okay, you just get the rough shape first of all. Okay, we then need to use the control drag handles at either end to pull it into shape. And by pulling the actual points down themselves, you can also do it that way as well. Okay, and that should just help you get it exactly sort of spot on for those. Okay, that's about right there. The second one will do the same. So we can just pull the points down into place using drag handles just to influence the shape. And sometimes, again, using the control polygons can just help you reposition it because it gives you a point out at the edge. We may want to also pull in the drag handle at the other end just to give us an additional control polygon. So each additional drag handle you pull in gives you an additional point to pull around. Okay, that's not a bad match on there. Just pull this shape out a little bit there, and then this one, a bit less influence. Okay, so that's not a bad match on there. You might want to just play around with that for a second just to sort of tweak it and get it exactly spot on. But that match is close enough. What I'm going to do next is to use this sketch to trim the model. So I'll select Trim Surface. And by using Trim Surface, we can select areas of the model to trim away. So I'll select this area here and trim it away from the design. Okay, then once you just get rid of that transparency we got, I can then start creating the other sketches which will just form this edge down the middle here. So I'll just hide away this edge. And again, I'll draw a sketch on the front plane, first of all. Okay. There's a bit of a lip here. So in order to put that lip in, I'm going to use a spline from this bottom edge up to the top. But I'm going to put a number of points around this top edge, which just makes the curve that much tighter. You'll see it just kicks out the spline at the other end, but we can just use the drag handle to pull it back into position. Okay, and then you can just use the points themselves to actually influence the shape of that lip. Okay. So defining how sharp it is, for instance. But that should be a good enough lip in that region, okay? So now to draw the other edge, we need to go ahead and actually draw a sketch on that plane that we created earlier on, plane 5. And that's just going to be a 2-point spline from either edge. And I'm going to define it so that it's nice and smooth at this edge. I'm going to control select the top edge and make it tangent. Let's try that again. Okay, the tangency just means it's smooth at that end, and then we can now put in the surface which will define this region down the middle. So I'll get rid of the sketch pictures again just by suppressing that folder, and I can then put in a boundary surface between these two. So select boundary surface. You can then choose the edges at either end, a bit like a loft, and then the boundaries in between. Okay, and that should give you a lip at one end with a nice smooth joint at the top. And you see there we've got that lip at the bottom. At the top edge we've got a nice smooth joint between the two of them. Okay, now you might be tempted, if you wanted a bit more accurate, you could possibly put in another guide around here. That would allow you to influence it. In our particular model that we did for the finished design, we used this surface as a different loft, again to just influence the shape and get it exactly right. But just for sort of the purposes of this webinar, using that single loft was good enough. Okay. So we'll switch back to this model now. So hopefully that's given you a good idea of how you might model some of the tricky areas of this design. Again, in future webinars, we'll move on to have a look at other areas. But that's actually the end of the webinar for today. So thanks very much for watching. Now, before we actually end the webinar, we'll point out some of the future ones actually we've got coming up. So next week is internal features, and then we're looking at the product assembly, and then using some of the validation tools within SolidWorks to do some kind of rough simulation on the model as well. Okay, so thanks very much for watching. If anyone's got any questions before we finish. Okay, I'm having a bit of trouble getting the questions through here. If you do have any questions, just feel free to give us a call on this one.